Hell yeah. I'm going to start this off by, first of all, thanking Pete, Paul, everyone involved in getting us here in person again. Thank you. Thank you. This is fantastic. Yeah, no. Yesterday was glorious. So let's just address the elephant in the room. 2020, 2021, and now this, whatever the hell we're living through right now, has been just awful. Right? I'm going to talk a lot about the pandemic as though it's a thing of the past. It's not. But also, let's just address the rest of the things that have been going on. Right? We are living in a time where we don't have to wait weeks to find out that there's a new war. We open our phones and we're bombarded with it, with political upheaval, with meth gators. Like, we're living through a lot. And so I'm going to talk a lot about how we can rebuild as a community. But I do want to make it clear, I'm in no way saying that we're ever going to be back where we were. Past is gone, it's burned down. This talk is about how we as a group and as a community can rebuild something beautiful from the ashes of what we've lost. This is already a feel-good talk, right? I do want to give a brief content warning. I'm an oversharer. There's always a purpose, but there is going to be a little bit of talk about mental health and suicide. So again, feel good talk, y'all. You excited? It's going to be great. It's going to be great. You'll love it. Just come along for the ride. I promise you won't regret it. So yeah, I'm going to start this off by going back in time just a little bit. So March 12th of 2020 was a great day. My family of 5 woke up, and my best friend in the whole world, my husband, we got the kids out the door to go to school. And we had a routine, y'all. We had, speaking of my younglings, this is gonna be neat. Y'all, I don't wanna brag, but I make people. So yeah, we had this routine down. We had everything finely tuned and honed for not just, efficiency and organizational skill, but like we're crazy people who briefly considered making a 4th human. It was scalable. Like our morning routine was awesome. And I loved it because I did, as was mentioned in my intro, I did 5 years hard time as a stay-at-home parent. And it was the longest 20 years of my life, those 5. I wasn't good at it. I'm not terribly maternal. I'm really good at teaching the morals, the ethics, and the values, but that crafting thing and the cooking and cleaning, it's, not good. Going back to work, especially having changed fields. Before I was a stay-at-home parent, I did close personal protection, and I was a bouncer in college. That was neat. Do you know they'll pay you to beat up drunken frat boys? What? Yes! As a D&D nerd, like that was I'm finally getting my payback. But yeah, I did a coding boot camp at Georgia Tech. And after that boot camp, I harangued a local company into creating a DevOps internship, which doesn't exist, so that was neat. Going back to work was like a vacation from the 24/7 job that is stay-at-home parent. If any of you are privileged enough to have a stay-at-home spouse that's doing all the maternal things and the parental things for you, worship them, please. Going back to work was a vacation. I got to go to my bougie office, change no diapers, drink coffee. It was great. They even paid me for it. And then came March 13th, 2020, and the mass exodus from my office. And then came the next few years. So it went away. I've been told that a lot of people love working remotely. They've been loving it. Who here loves remote work? Just show of hands. Okay, cool. Leave them up if you like remote work with 3 tiny humans in the house. Okay, you're crazy.
You already knew that.
I'm gonna be honest. I do not love the remote work. So when the shutdown started, my children were 10 years old, 5 years old, and 9 months old. And you don't know a good time until you are nursing a squirming, soon-to-be toddler on a call where your team agreement says you must have video on. That's neat. Trying to debug a Jenkins build, which is hell without the rest of it. So it was not my favorite time. Because again, I'm married to my very best friend who is a software architect. We were both working remotely. And what our daily life looked like for quite some time was, no more family dinners at the dining room table. That now became a workstation for 2 kids on Zoom school, 2 adults trying to make some software. And then my youngest lived in the baby cage, which I'm told good parents call a pack and play. But let's just be honest about what that thing was, okay? That was 4 of us have to be heads down. Sorry, kid. Not the most fun. Please don't call Child Protective Services on me. So I realized pretty quickly that some things were going to need to change in our home. Our new normal was not sustainable, okay? And so I thought, well, if I have to, work this way, I'm going to make it as tolerable as I can. Okay. So saying that my productivity tanked under these circumstances would be like saying the Titanic had a fairly rough maiden voyage. Okay, it was ugly. And I thought, well, what do you do for a living, Regas? Let's streamline this. Let's make, as my father would say, let's make some chicken salad out of chicken shit. And okay, let's do this. So first, I gathered a list of requirements for our new normal. What do we need? Do we need quieter workspaces, faster internet now that we're all at home? Better snacks. My middle child put her foot down and said, better snacks, Mom, up your game. Do we need more office supplies, right? More frequent diaper changes. The baby couldn't speak, but the smell gave it away. That needed to be increased. And I started out on our first ever 1-week Regas Wenzel family sprint. We had planning and retros Sunday night, and we would talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we wanted to change for the next week. It was a lot. It was a lot. So it's been a long couple of years. And I'm going to freely admit that for most of the last 2 years, I have been really fast to focus on what I've lost. A little selfish. I'll admit I was a little selfish. I don't get to go where I want to go, or at least I didn't for a very long time. I'm immunocompromised, so that was neat. The pandemic took from me sporting events and all these frivolous things. COVID also tried to kill me Thanksgiving of 2020. Before vaccines were available, with my broken little immune system, I went through 3 weeks of hell. So this is how bad it was for me. I found myself, a grown woman, laying on the couch 20 feet from the restroom, very aware that I did not have the physical strength to get up and walk 20 feet. And that's a dilemma. And all I could think is, whatever, Regas, it's gonna happen, just lay here. And then I thought, if I wet myself at almost 40 years old, my husband will never look at me the same way again. And I rallied. I had to roll onto the floor and army crawl, but some things matter. COVID was hell the first time. It wasn't great the second or third time either, but it was worse the first time. But I survived. I lived through it. And another elephant in the room is that a lot of people haven't. We've all lost people. We've lost friends, relatives. The whole world has. And just that is so much more important than the inconvenience of remote work. This is a global hardship that we all have to overcome, right? So how do we do that? Like how do we just, okay, I guess we're going to pretend the pandemic's over. We're going to ignore the news. Murder hornets apparently changed their mind, so that's great. How do we rebuild from here? Well, it's going to look like putting people first no matter what, right? And moving hand in hand with the other people who survived. I don't like vague advice, so I could just stop the talk there, and because that's really it. We're going to put people first, and we're going to do it together. I don't like vague. I like concrete. So we're going to get into some concrete things. First, rebuilding together looks like extending grace and the benefit of the doubt to everybody. We're going back in time again. February of 2015. I was driving home from Tuscaloosa, Alabama to Atlanta at night. I ran several stop signs. I did not maintain lane. I should never have been driving. I got flicked off by a lot of motorists on that drive. And of course I did. I was not maintaining lane. I was running red lights. I was a hazard, right? Of course people were screaming at me as they drove past, shooting me the bird. What those people had no way of knowing is what my day had looked like up to that point. That was the day in a Tuscaloosa hospital I extubated my mother. And I had to say my goodbyes, wait for her to pass, and then find a way to get home to the rest of my family. I should never have been behind the wheel of a car. It's funny, the things you don't think about until it's too late. Rebuilding together looks like acknowledging that when people around us are being problematic, they almost certainly have something going on at home. They almost certainly have something going on in their life that you do not know about, and extending grace to them. And what does that look like? That looks like if a coworker drops the ball on completing a task, instead of starting with, God, what is wrong with that guy? Or, hey, buddy, you said this was going to be done yesterday? Come on, where is it? It looks like, hey, I noticed that this hasn't been done yet. What do you need to be supported to get this done? How can I help? Right? Acknowledging that when your coworkers are grumpy pants, it could be anything from they had to put their dog down recently to we're just burnt out because, wow, we've been working remotely for such a long time and this is a lot. Or it could be that their partner just got a really upsetting health diagnosis. Or it could be that they gained some COVID shutdown weight and now none of their clothes fit, but they're expected to go back to the office and what the hell, I can't wear sweatpants? Why not? Right? Sometimes it's not that dramatic, but it's still a big deal. When your coworkers are problematic, extend them grace, except that you don't know what's going on at home. Fred Rogers, and I hate the way that this quote gets misused sometimes by the news media, but I still love it because he practically raised me. So he's famously quoted as saying, when I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. Rebuilding together looks like being the helpers. Now this is where my ADHD kicks in, and I'm going to go on a brief tirade. When I say be a helper, I do not mean be a martyr. Anytime you hear me talk about mental health or the fact that the software doesn't write itself, we have to take care of the people if we'd like the software to be bases. I talk a lot about self-care, and I don't mean a froofy bubble bath. I mean like making sure you get enough food and hydration, and then freeing up real estate in your brain for other tasks by subbing out as much work as you can, and cool. When I say be a helper, I don't mean to overload yourself with obligations or take on things you can't take on. However, as I teach my children, if you can't help, you can't help, but if you can help, you must. You must. What does this look like? It looks like at work. It's end of sprint. You're done. Instead of pulling from the backlog, look at your coworkers. Who's really far behind? Going back to, they probably have stuff going on at home. I mean, I don't know anyone in this industry who doesn't take pride in completing work to excellent standards and wants to be a valuable member of the team. If someone's really behind, offer to help them. Offer to pick up some slack if you have the bandwidth to do so. It looks like your more junior teammates. They're getting a little frustrated, ideally before they're frustrated. Offer to pair with them. Offer to just, hey, I just fixed this problem. You want me to show you what I did? It looks like helping your coworkers in any way you can that doesn't hurt you. Always put your mask on first, as it were. But being a helper is so many things. Another thing that it looks like is checking in on people. Now, obviously, you're going to have coworkers where you notice immediately they need checking in on. They're seeming real burnt out, but spoiler alert, it looks like checking in on people who seem like they're fine. Which brings me to, for me, in my opinion, what is the most important takeaway I hope you get. Mental health matters. The software doesn't write itself, and if we are not taking care of ourselves, we will not write the best product, right? The pandemic and just the last few years has been really unkind to the mental health of a lot of us. For example, you'll never believe this, but I'm a little bit of an extrovert. And speaking at conferences, seeing nods and people laughing and just the feeling of community in this room, it's like a drug to me. And 2020 was supposed to be my year for conference drugs, y'all. I had lined up my first ever paid speaking engagement, multiple international engagements, and I had a plan to give my first keynote by fall. I had a plan, I had a hustle, I was working it. And then As Bo Burnham so eloquently put it, the strangest thing happened. I did not adapt well to the new normal. After just a few months of working remotely with kids at home, I hit a wall. I was depressed. I was anxious. I stopped sleeping, to speak of. My already problematic, fairly abusive relationship with alcohol took an even worse decline. I pretty much single-handedly kept the Argentinian wine industry in business through the shutdowns, which would be a much funnier joke if it were a joke. I was not okay. And I started having thoughts like, I don't think I'm cut out for this. I don't think I can do this anymore. And then I started thinking maybe everyone would be better off without me. And it came really close several times. Now, why am I telling you this? I'm gonna be real honest. When I'm sitting at home on a Friday night thinking, what would be a crazy good time? You know what? I'm gonna tell a room full of strangers about that time I had to check myself into a trauma center because I was on the brink of suicide. That is not my idea of a good time. I'm telling you because no one noticed. If I was on a Meet or a Zoom, camera on, smile came with it. I was checking in on my colleagues, making sure they were okay. I was everybody's cheerleader. No one noticed that I was drowning on dry land for a very long time. Checking in on people who seem fine, it's a good thing because you never know who is like Robin Williams or Anthony Bourdain or like me. I am very, very fortunate that my best friend and people close to me started to notice, and I was able to take 8 weeks and go to a center for women with PTSD, women like me. Not everyone gets that help. Not everyone avails themselves of these resources that each and every one of us deserves. Check in on people who seem like they're fine. It is one of the most important things you can do to rebuild this community. And here's the best part. It seems vulnerable and scary to walk up to someone, especially a coworker you might not know that well because you joined in the middle of a shutdown and you've never actually been in the same city. It can be scary to say, hey, how's your mental health? You good? You good? What's really easy, the easiest way to check in with someone is to be transparent about your mental health. When I'm on a team call and say, yeah, I know I said I would have that done by end of business yesterday, but I had a really bad mental health day. I just could not focus, and it'll be done by lunch. Sorry, guys. Every time I am vulnerable and admit that that's what slowed me down, that's my thing to deal with, I have coworkers privately message me because now they know I'm safe. It's safe to tell me that they're burnt out, that they're not doing great. The easiest way you can be a helper and check in on people is just to be honest. Because it doesn't matter if you didn't get to the point I got to, this has not been kind to any of us. Be brave, be vulnerable, and be open about what you're dealing with. And it is just so easy for people to recognize you as safe. I think it's also important that we move forward by being thankful because some good has come out of the last 2.5 years. And I know that, be thankful, it's so trite. But a lot of good came out of this. I can tell you that my partner Michael and I, romance aside, I'm sorry, but love comes and goes, romance aside, this shutdown, the pandemic and the last 2.5 years has forced us to be team parent, a unified front. We are outnumbered by Team Kid. We have had to band together. Our division of labor went from fairly well-defined to, okay, who's got what meetings today? All right, I can take the kid to the park for 30 minutes for that call. Who's got what? We have had to really, really up our co-parenting and friendship game, and it has been a colossal blessing in my home. I've gotten to see a lot of firsts with my baby I never would have seen if I'd been in the office and he'd been at the daycare. That's huge for a working parent. My kids, I was able to homeschool my oldest girl for 5th grade year, which meant she got actual US history, not someone else's version. That's a blessing that will serve her well the rest of her life. All those people who love remote work, well, here you go. If you've been productive the last 2.5 years from home, it's really hard for someone to rationalize why you should get in a car and drive to an office now, right? I could not have done the therapy program that I did a few years ago, I don't believe, if I had still been in an office. Now, arguably, I might not have needed it, but already being remote, when I went to my manager and did the scary thing and said, I'm not okay, I need to work half days and go to this program the other half of the day. I think it was easier for him to say absolutely yes, because I was already remote. It's not like I was taking up even more time away from the office and I was still able to work. Full disclosure, mental health is not linear, as it turns out. I've now done a second very similar program because, as it turns out, we all deserve that when we need it. Again, working remotely, it was a much easier sell to my now manager to say, I know that it sucks to have a resource down to half days or doing whatever, but losing a resource forever is worse. Yeah, I'm gonna go do this. There are good things that have come out of this. I have pretty much lived in elastic waist pants for 2.5 years, and that was such a gift. And the Zoom feature to touch up my appearance really, really appeals to my vanity. I wish that I could just put that over real life. I look good on Zoom, y'all. I'm there for it. Another part of rebuilding together is accepting that the shutdowns, just the new risks, all these things, it hasn't just changed the way we work, it's changed the way we think about the world around us. I mean, 2.5 years ago, if you asked me to think about software development cycle or my coworkers or whatever, I probably would have, seen a bunch of devs scribbling on a whiteboard wall, implementing disruptive solutions or synergistically creating future-proof applications or whatever corporate jargon probably, and there would have been a montage because that's who I am as a person. That's what would have popped into my head. But now when I think about work, that's not what I see. I see me with my work machine, sitting on the floor, trying desperately to pay attention, and just over to my left, my 9-month-old baby holding onto the couch, getting ready, being brave, letting go of the couch, and taking his first steps. Oh man, this is the best sprint planning ever. I was in awe. That's what work looks like to me. It looks like my husband has meetings. Where can I take these kids with a mobile hotspot so that they're not playing 24/7 video games and maybe getting some fresh air now and then, but I still have to be productive at work. That's what work looks like to me now. We've all changed. I'm thankful that I have been at Salesforce for the last 1.5 years, where they truly understand that together is no longer our colleagues, our customers, and our leaders. Our coworkers now necessarily include our spouses, our partners, our parents, our children, and our pets. Our reality is different now. Rebuilding this space, this community, looks like a lot of love, a deep sense of commitment to doing so, and a lot of courageous vulnerability. It is scary to reach out to someone and check in on them. It is scary to be honest about your own struggles and to get your needs met. Even if you know you deserve it, it's scary. And this is what I love about scary things. You can only be brave when you're afraid and do something anyway. If you're not afraid, it's not courageous. Lean into that scary feeling. Be a helper, check in on people, extend people grace, and acknowledge you don't know what's going on at home. And I love being a part of this particular community because I see on the faces of everyone out there that you're taking it to heart, and we actually will do these things for one another. And I'm very honored to be a part of this. So yeah, let's all leave here today with these things in mind, and much like my toddler, bravely let go of the couch together and take our little toddling steps and rebuild this community together. Thank you.